The era of growth is a ghost. The systemic drift has reached its terminal velocity. You are no longer living in an economy. You are living in a digestion cycle. Financial cannibalism is not a metaphor. It is a biological reality. Banks do not want your currency. They want the energy required to produce it. They are performing a surgical extraction of your future ATP. In the visceral history of the architect, credit was a high-risk tool for territorial expansion. In the year 2026, credit is the digestive fluid of the machine. This is the terminal visceral breach. Your biological shell is being consumed from the inside out to maintain the solvency of an abstract ledger. This is the biology of the dead body. In the solid world, a primate's safety was defined by its surplus. To have a war chest was to have a biological buffer, a state where the metabolism could shift from survival redline to resource crystallization. The machine has inverted this through the mechanism of compound interest. Interest is not a fee, it is a metabolic drain. When you carry debt, your body is effectively rented by the creditor. Your mitochondria, the engines of your autonomy, are being forced to generate energy to service a ghost. This induces a state of chronic, high-frequency ATP exhaustion. You are spending your cellular life force to fund the crystallization of someone else's power. Every interest payment is a slice of your future health, surgically removed and converted into systemic liquidity. Analyze the mitochondrial capture of the credit trap. The machine has engineered a world where the individual must borrow to inhabit the reality. This is not a choice, it is a visceral mandate. By raising the cost of basic survival, shelter, heat, food, the system forces you to trade your future ATP for current access. This induces a state of chronic visceral stress. Your HPA axis is in a state of permanent redline. The cortisol never drops because the debt never sleeps. This is the visceral breach. The constant stress melts the structural integrity of your tissues. Your blood loses its density. Your bones lose their steel. You are being softened for easier digestion. You become a managed asset that is biologically incapable of rebellion because your entire metabolic output is dedicated to the simple act of trying to stay solvent. Dissect the status trap of the credit line. The system sells you lifestyle while it performs a total extraction of your sovereignty. You believe you are buying a home or a car, but you are actually just leasing a cage with your own lifeblood. Your biological shell is becoming thin, transparent, liquid. You are losing the density required to resist the cold steel of the machine. This is the crystallization of the new feudalism. The elite maintain their own solids, their own debt-free assets, their own high-integrity war chests, while they force you into a state of metabolic serfdom. This is the final status trap, the belief that you are successful because you have a high credit limit, when you are actually just a high-yield coordinate for the grid's digestion. You are working 80 hours a week for a life that is biologically liquidating you. The steel of the ledger is cold and is deep, under the rain that is washing your youth. Do your push-ups in the dark of the cell, while the gloves of the hunter are ringing the bell. The bank is a mouth and the debt is the tooth, in a world that has traded the fire for the truth. The second layer of the hunt is the war for your focus through interest rate anxiety. The neural rot of financial cannibalism begins with the arithmetic of the void. When your primary cognitive load is the management of debt, your brain is forced to spend its capital on the calculation of its own disappearance. This is the systematic liquidation of the architect's seat. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of long-term crystallization, is being hijacked by the reactive loops of the basal ganglia. You stop thinking about building a 10-year fortress and start thinking about the next 30 days of survival. This is neural rot in its most advanced form. Focus is a function of security. The brain requires a stable war chest of attention to maintain the voltage of the will. The machine has discovered that by creating financial insecurity through dynamic rates, it can perform a surgical myelin extraction. When you are worried about the interest rate or the payment deadline, your signal leaks. The voltage of your intent drops. You lose the capacity for deep, high-friction work because your neural bandwidth is occupied by the noise of the ledger. This is the status trap of the informed borrower. You are not becoming more financially literate. You are undergoing a high-frequency extraction of your attention span. The machine floods your mind with credit offers and payment plans to ensure you never have the clarity to see the friction of your own chains. Analyze the sensory enclosure of the digital balance. The systemic drift has replaced the tactile solid weight of gold and cash with the flickering, low-integrity glow of the mobile bank app. This is neural rot, the artificial flicker rate of the digital enclosure, constantly updating, constantly reminding you of the debt, is designed to keep the basal ganglia in a state of constant, low-level stimulation. This prevents the brain brain from entering the deep crystallization states required for structural independence. You are living in a neural emulsion of artificial value, where your memories are being liquidated to ensure you are available for extraction 24/7. The machine has stolen your sense of enough and replaced it with a permanent not yet. You are a managed node whose very thoughts are being pulsed by the frequency of the expiring ledger. Dissect the status trap of the digital reputation. Every credit score update is a microtransaction in the extraction of your sovereignty. You believe you are building a profile, but you are actually just providing the machine with a high-fidelity map of your neural obedience. This is the crystallization of the slave mind. You are performing for an audience of algorithms, seeking approval from a system that is calculating your liquidation. The systemic drift has made autonomy a high-cost luxury. Your focus is shattered by the smart economy, leaving you in a state of terminal neural rot, incapable of envisioning a future that doesn't involve a bank's permission. Reclaim your cognitive insulation. Real power requires a mind that is not for rent. The digital void is a hall of mirrors designed to induce ATP exhaustion through the constant management of financial anxiety. Turn off the balance interface. Look at the gray steel of the reality you inhabit. If the fear of the debt feels unbearable, that is the signal that you are still a biological entity, not еще полностью ликвидированный, not yet fully liquidated, into a user. Use that friction to fuel your exit from the grid. The architect builds his own value. The serf begs for an extension. The extraction is total. The myelin is thin. The signal is lost in the noise of the interest. You are no longer an architect. You are a neural peasant calculating the cost of your own consciousness. The hunt has been inverted. The predator is now the prey of the very tools it created for expansion. In the visceral history of the architect, credit was an evolutionary gamble, a way to front-load resources to capture territory. To borrow was to strike with the strength of the future. The machine has identified this drive and turned it into a terminal cage. We are witnessing the total liquidation of the alpha substrate. The systemic drift has replaced the hunter with the borrower, a domesticated variant of the human species, burdened by the metabolic weight of a life it does not own. You are undergoing a transgenerational extraction of your sovereignty. Analyze the domestication of the hunter. In the solid world, the primate's aggression was fueled by surplus. To have a war chest was to be capable of high-friction resistance. The machine has found a way to bypass this resistance by making the war chest a liability. When you carry debt, your basal ganglia are permanently hijacked. You are no longer hunting for resources. You are hunting for the permission to exist. This is the systemic drift toward the scavenger logic. You move from payment to payment, never accumulating enough ATP to challenge the hierarchy. You have been rewired to prefer the managed safety of the debt enclosure over the high-risk sovereignty of the independent shell. You are becoming soft, a biological unit that cannot survive without the credit signal. The hearth was the point of zero entropy, the fortress where the lineage pooled its resources to project power across generations. The bank has dismantled the hearth and replaced it with the mortgage. This is the visceral breach of the lineage. By burdening the family unit with a 30-year extraction cycle, the system ensures that the gene can never reach a state of crystallization. Your ATP is spent entirely on the maintenance of a rented enclosure that will be reclaimed the moment your pulse fails. You have no descendants to inherit your steel. You only have heirs to your debt. This is the silent sterilization of the species through the medium of the ledger. You are a biological artifact, a social predator turned into a stationary, solitary consumer of your own future vitality. Dissect the liquidity of loyalty. In the solid world, the pack was bound by high-integrity, high-friction bonds of mutual survival. In the liquid world of financial cannibalism, these bonds are dissolved by the necessity of individual solvency. The systemic drift has engineered a market of one, where every member of the tribe is a separate, taxable node of entropy. You are forced to compete with your own pack for the access provided by the creditor. This prevents the crystallization of a collective defense. You are alone. You are vulnerable. You are a solitary node of ATP, being filtered through a selection chamber where only the compliant and the solvent are allowed to survive. The steel of the system is the only thing firm, under the rain in a world of subprime. Do your push-ups while the furnace is cold. The gloves of the master are greedy and bold. The predator's gone. The borrower remains in a world of cold shadows and digital chains. Part 4. Systemic dissection. The architecture of the digestive enclosure. The fourth layer is the total financial enclosure of the life cycle. This is the neural arbitrage of the modern banking system. The machine understands that debt is the ultimate control signal. By making the individual dependent on a centralized ledger for the very right to inhabit space, the grid achieves gives total institutional control over the velocity of life. In the visceral history of the architect, energy and land were the shields against extraction. The machine has dismantled these shields. We are witnessing the birth of metabolic serfdom, a system where your entire metabolic output is owned by the creditor. This is the terminal stage of the extraction grid. Dissect the glucose guillotine of the debt market. This is the terminal phase of the systemic enclosure. Interest rates, credit scores, and minimum payments are the blades of this machine. They drop on the community, decapitating the social bonds to ensure that every individual remains a separate, taxable node of entropy. The economy of scale has been inverted to serve the parasite. In the solid world, the pack shared the metabolic load. In the liquid world, you are responsible for the entire maintenance of your solitary cell. This induces a state of chronic, high-frequency ATP exhaustion. Your body, sensing that it is unprotected and financially vulnerable, remains in a state of survival redline. The cortisol never drops. The inflammation never subsides. This is the visceral breach. The bank as a sovereign is the terminal enclosure. The machine has discovered that a human in debt is a human who cannot plan for rebellion. This is the neural arbitrage of economic anxiety. By destroying the solid store of value, the system has created the ultimate high-yield coordinate for the extraction of the spread. You are no longer an economic actor. You are a biological interface for the circulation of the bank's credits. If you show signs of solid behavior, if you attempt to build a war chest or secure an independent territory, the system increases the level of systemic friction in your life. It increases your interest. It throttles your access. This is the systemic drift toward total biological enclosure. Analyze the elite solids. This is the final status trap. While the machine sells you the freedom of the credit line and the convenience of the digital wallet, the masters are consolidating the solid. They are the ones who hold the raw land, the physical steel, and the debt-free resources. They inhabit a state of economic crystallization, while they force you into a state of economic emulsion. They understand that permanence is power, and they have convinced you that permanence is friction. You are working 80 hours a week to pay for the access to a life that is biologically liquidating you, siphoning your ATP into their permanent vaults. Every payment you make is a dividend for the elite who hold the keys to the ledger. The architecture of control is now a metabolic ledger. The grid monitors your debt-to-income ratio as a proxy for your behavioral compliance. A good citizen is one who services their debt with the mechanical precision of a clock. A dangerous architect is one who tries to exit the grid, to settle the debt, to build a solid redoubt, to disappear from the ledger. This is the systemic drift toward the total liquidation of privacy. In the era of financial cannibalism, there is no off-grid because your very capacity to acquire resources is tied to the creditor's signal. You are a biological engine that is being tuned for maximum output and minimum resistance. The crystallization of the system is a cold, mechanical process that has no room for the fire of the independent hunter. The bank is the new mouth, and your future is the meal. The digestion is finished. The systemic drift has reached the point of absolute metabolic zero. The protocol of financial cannibalism has transitioned from active extraction to terminal reclamation. After a decade of servicing the ghost of interest, the architect is no longer an entity. It is a byproduct. The bank has consumed the future, and now it is recycling the remains. This is the 10-year rot, the molecular erosion of a species that traded its fire for a credit line. The visceral zero, metabolic liquidation. The shell is a ruin. 10 years of chronic cortisol floods have performed a total visceral breach. The mitochondria, once the high-density powerhouses of your autonomy, have entered a state of irreversible atrophy. This is the terminal state of ATP exhaustion. The debt body is biologically incapable of sustaining a pulse without the credit signal. Your blood is thin, your bones are brittle, your heart is just a pump for a ledger you can never balance. Under the decade of high-frequency systemic friction, the tissues have lost their density. We see the liquid generation, a population whose biological integrity has been siphoned to maintain the liquidity of the central ledger. You have been softened until the resistance is gone. You are a biological radiator siphoning your final joules to cool the servers that manage your bankruptcy. The genes for territorial aggression and long-term crystallization have been silenced via epigenetic methylation. You are a biological engine that has been throttled into a state of permanent metabolic debt. The bank is full, the body is empty. The neural zero, cognitive amnesia, and temporal erasure. The neural rot is total. The prefrontal cortex, the throne of your will, has been surgically liquidated by a decade of interest rate anxiety. For 3,650 days, the basal ganglia have been the sole interface of your existence. You can no longer perceive a 10-year trajectory because the 30-day billing cycle is the only horizon your brain remembers. Memory has been erased. The architect built for centuries. The consumed cannot remember the effort of yesterday. Your mind is a fragmented neural emulsion of reactive triggers, perfectly optimized for a consciousness that is hosted by the creditor. This is the terminal status trap, the belief that you are informed when you are actually just a managed node inhabiting a brain that has forgotten how to say no. You are a ghost inhabiting a rented consciousness, performing your final functions in a brain that is being reformatted for the next occupant before you even finish the thought. The evolutionary zero, extinction of the inheritor. The evolutionary mandate of the lineage has been terminated. In 2036, the family is a financial liability that the digestive enclosure has rendered impossible. The liquidity of loyalty has led to the total liquidation of the pack. When you cannot transmit crystallized effort to the next generation because the bank owns your future ATP, the concept of legacy loses its meaning. This is the silent sterilization of the species via the interest rate. The primate, deprived of its capacity to create a war chest, has regressed to the logic of the scavenger. You no longer hunt for resources. You scavenge for the permission to remain solvent for one more hour. Your lineage ends with you, and the grid considers this an optimized outcome. The fire has been put out by the ledger. The only thing you leave behind is a balance of zero and a body that costs more to bury than the grid is willing to pay. The systemic zero, the rule of the solids. The world is a silent, high-integrity network of steel and silicon, where the digested move through the ruins of their own autonomy like shadows. The elite, the solids, have crystallized their power into permanent assets. They own the land, they own the energy, they own the steel. You own the shadow of a debt. Every breath you take in your rented cell is a microtransaction in your own decay. The elite maintain their own solid self, while they converted you into a stream of decaying data. They understand that permanence is power, and they have convinced you that permanence is friction. You work 80 hours a week for access units that burn faster than you can perceive them. Your debt is their insurance policy. In 2036, freedom is just a line of code that can be deleted the moment your social credit drops below the extraction threshold.